certain ingredients, peas and lentils, chickpeas and dry beans, those are the real problem. It can be devastating. Dilated cardiomyopathy does not often create very loud heart murmurs, and so a lot of these murmurs are missed. Unfortunately, we were catching these dogs way too late. At that point, the damage may be done. Since we started seeing this issue back in 2017, I've easily seen 200 dogs with this. It's a condition that we still see every week to every 2 weeks, and sometimes many more times than that.
Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Mark Harmon. He is a board-certified veterinary cardiologist at Boundary Bay Veterinary Specialty Hospital. Let's do this one. Do grain-free diets cause heart problems in dogs?
So I'm actually going to say no, but there's going to be a very strong asterisk on this answer. So it is not the presence or the absence of grain in a diet for a dog that seems to be the problem. What seems to be the problem is that certain ingredients that get included, such as peas and lentils and chickpeas and dry beans, that those are the real problem with these causing a type of heart disease, and we can definitely talk more about that. The problem is if we call this a grain-free issue, then it creates two misconceptions that sometimes you have a diet that actually is grain inclusive, but has ingredients that are problematic and could still be a risky diet. But I've also seen the situation where people call this a grain-free issue, and the owners just feel like, well, if I just add rice to the diet, or if I add some form of a grain to the diet, then it's going to be safe. And that's definitely not the case. So those are not protective measures to do. And so even though we've kind of latched onto it as being kind of an easier talking point to call it a grain-free issue, it's really an ingredient problem. And it seems to be these peas and lentils and chickpeas and things that are really the biggest problem.
Wow.
What that leads to, and what we've seen since like 2017, is that this will cause their heart muscle, the ventricles of the heart, which are the primary pumping chambers, especially the left side of the heart, will get very big, it will get dilated, and the pumping strength of the heart becomes very poor. And so if it can't get rid of that blood and get it out to the rest of the body, then it will start to back up upstream, and animals will start to have congestive heart failure, fluid in their lungs or in the rest of their body, or arrhythmias, because basically the heart's not functioning as well as it can be. It's a really difficult and tricky sort of disease because dilated cardiomyopathy does not often create very loud heart murmurs. These are usually moderate loud at best, and so a lot of these murmurs are missed if they come in and they're just excited, and you're kind of listening to an excited dog that's bouncing around. It's hard enough, and you could miss a really, really soft heart murmur. So unfortunately, for a while there especially, we were catching these dogs way too late, and we were catching them once they had developed signs of heart failure or bad arrhythmias. And at that point, the damage may be done. It may be a situation where you're trying to stabilize the heart disease as best you can, and that may be the best outcome that you can get in that situation. However, if you can catch those dogs before they go into heart failure, a lot of times those dogs, you can actually reverse their heart disease. You can actually get them to go back to normal. You just have to catch them before too much damage is done with them. And so that's another thing to say, that, you know, if your dog has a heart murmur, especially if it's on a diet that could be problematic, it's a situation where we probably do want to know for sure that there's nothing more worrisome like this going on.
That is so interesting. So do we know how those ingredients like chickpeas and lentils are causing the damage?
We don't right now. So there's about 16 peer-reviewed studies that have been put out that keep finding this consistent sort of relationship with things. The initial thing that was put out there back in the early papers in golden retrievers was taurine deficiency, taurine being an amino acid or a constituent of proteins. We started with taurine as kind of an easy, logical place to look at it, because taurine, we've known since the 80s, could be a problem as far as causing this type of heart disease. Actually used to be a very common type of heart disease in cats, when they figured out that cats are not small dogs. They have very metabolism, and they reformulated their diets, and actually has become a much less commonly seen issue in cats as well. So we started with taurine, and then what we've subsequently found is actually a lot of these dogs have normal taurine concentrations, and they still can get better if we change their diet and can support them with some medication. So it definitely seems to be a more complicated issue than what we currently know. The other thing I would say is that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration was leading some sort of investigation into it, at least back in 2017, 2018 is when they said that they were going to start doing it. And they actually just recently came out and said that they would not be giving any sort of further updates on it, that they basically can't figure out an obvious thing behind it. That is not to say that the issue has gone away at all. And actually, Lisa Freeman, who is a board certified veterinary nutritionist from Tufts University, has been really instrumental at doing some of the research involved at this and figuring out how we can stabilize these animals and help them out, but how can we try to prevent this from happening with them. She has some really good information on her pet foodology website, which I can provide the link for.
Oh, yeah. That would be interesting.
It's kind of an updated picture. Yes, the FDA may be stopping their updates, but the problem hasn't gone away. I can also tell you, as a conservative number, since we started seeing this issue back in 2017, I've easily seen 200 dogs with this issue. So it's a condition that we still see every week to every 2 weeks, and sometimes many more times than that. So it's still out there, it's still very present, and it can be a really devastating disease. So definitely encourage people to actually look at the ingredient list and try to make sure they're not feeding those sort of things.
So pet food brands are still making foods with these ingredients, like grain-free and vegan diets.
Yeah, and actually if you go to these pet food stores, it can be a little harrowing. I actually walk up and down the aisles of these pet stores all the time because there's all of these diet brands out nowadays. And like every single day, I'm hearing about a new brand that I've never heard of. And if you just walk up and down the aisles, a good portion of the diets will have problematic ingredients in them when you look at them. So you need to be really careful with it. And you also need to, like, pet owners just need to talk to their veterinarians and also kind of trust their input on things. So it's a tough situation, but you just need to be kind of proactive about making sure you're not putting them at some sort of unnecessary risk. And I will say it's not every single dog that's on these diets that develops a problem. That's part of why it's been so difficult to figure out, is because some dogs are on these diets for a long time and never have any sort of issues. But when it creates a problem, it can be devastating for them. I would say if you can avoid diets that have peas and lentils and chickpeas and dry beans in them, or if you are going to do some sort of home formulated diet, you should definitely work with a board certified veterinary nutritionist to make sure that you are formulating a complete diet, because we know that certain nutritional deficiencies can put them at a very high risk for developing heart disease down the road.
That is so helpful and interesting to know. Really good updates.